Once there was a fire in the old house. He had cleaned the stove with kerosene, then turned a burner on. He would have been killed, but for something that loves a fool. My screaming uncle ran through every room. Water! Water! Grandpa, toothless, used up, laughed from his wheelchair. Pues como? No puedo? Watching both flames and widowed son running to meet each other this side of night. He laughed his 90 years at my bald and gaunt uncle, who ran in circles looking everywhere, nowhere for water. Water would have drowned the flames, and what they needed was fire. Fire for old broken rail yard bones. Fire for scarred, blackened factory lungs. Fire that sweeps through hills, loosening seeds, and fuels the stars above teeming seas. Uncle was gurneyed from the house as snow fell, and all that day and night, Grandpa sat alone, listening to the stubble broom's long, slow fall in a room muffled with junk, until a voice rushed over the floor. This is the end of me, it said. Please watch. Along with the very sacred, very beautiful aspects of death in Mexico, there's also a morbid side too. Some of it comes from the great tragedy of the colonial period. A lot of it comes from pre-Columbian history. And as a boy, I would hear things growing up from my grandparents, a little bit about that stuff. And my mother's father was an arriero. He would travel around in Mexico like a poor salesman with a burro or two. And he would spend time with the Indians in certain parts of Mexico, especially in Tierra Caliente. And the revolution basically forced them from Mexico, and they left with just the shirts on their backs. He had some very interesting stories about sort of the supernatural. And on the Days of the Dead is when the veil between the living and the dead becomes very, very thin or even non-existent. And a lot of his stories had to do with things of that nature. One of the stories was that he actually encountered a demon. A lot of these stories are just kind of like archetypes of paradigms, but there was enough kind of detail or particularity about it that got my interest. And this is a poem about meeting that demon, and the demon is the one that's speaking here. It's called A Demon Meets Papacayo on the Road to Mictlan. The demon appears in the form of a large dog. Saludos, Gallo. It's me again, dripping wormy wetness from the earth. Risen. No, don't run away, amigo. I want to talk, pues, here in the moonlight. Years I've watched you from between cracks and through glassy lakes, your thin shoe soles like 2 tons of dust. You're a pious fellow with a shifty streak, just like your father, and his back to Adan. After all these years, I can still find you swapping trinkets con indios y pelados in the wilds of Zocalo. No, hombre, put away your pistola. Behold this light behind my eye. You can cross yourself, but can't drive me away like a ghost haunting dead husks of corn. Go on, call your saints, eat your words and letters. My names have power too. Diablo, Chabuco, Bingo, Satanas, Lucifero, Xoloto. I spread fire with this eye. My houses are next to churches. When I yell, it's hard for men to pray. We demons choose to turn wishes to doubts, madden the taste of desire, and appear in half-light to inhabit each of you. We're busy every day, unlike Boss Juan, who's always eating pan dulce, drinking pulque, absent from the wretched land. We break our necks just to sow a little discontent, and what an effort to bore into dreams, giving your waking hours fits. It's all a dog can do to tear out your throat. Won't you tickle my chest or scratch behind my ears? I see you'd rather not, as I am smelly and hot from all the filth and fire through which I've trod, dogging your heels. I'd like to talk more, but I must slip a stranger's hand in a child's and spit up a little rain to cover it up. You can go now, Wes. I'll leave you for a while, but understand, the way these things go, I'll be back after you leave your town and head for Gringoland, where bad luck will dog your days, where your children will disobey, and your woman fall into madness, and the Galacho turn from wrath to indifference, where one day you'll be thinking of a life you could have lived, and it'll be me again. I've been present at the moment of death more times than I care to say. And, you know, there's something both horrible and also something beautiful about death. This is a poem about my father's death. It's called Knives. The morning before he died, my father, silent, ashen, weaker by the day, decided to sharpen the kitchen knives. He worked each blade smoothly, like a skater on a slaty lake, and filled up the house with the sound of preparing. Later I asked him to take a spin with me in the old Ford. He sat waiting, watching, as cars and buses stormed past our view, the windows of a distant high-rise, black as the peepholes of a tower. He watched and waited in silence. That night I could hear him in the room next to mine, loud, deep breaths, indrawn, followed by rackety gusts. I was used to his weather, like a bird sleeping in the wind, and I dropped off that night to his 200-pound snore, fading into pooling dreams. Then at 3 a.m., the wing beats, the growling, the rough dialogue. I heard my father draw the knives, enraged and hateful toward the dark. I heard him slash and grunt, delivering or receiving a blow. But what good against the swift arrival, the strength of the wings, the power of the sword? What chance when eternal night bursts into the room, snow swirling in the air, and a hulking shadow, breathless there? At dawn, I entered the darkened space where silence flowed in and out. He was there on his bed, the sheets balled at his big feet. He was there on his side, so very still, heavier. He was there alone, in his finished time, the knives, a pale shimmer on the floor. So this has been sort of alluded to before, the Days of the Dead is also about resurrection. This is a poem about my parents. It's called Until There Is No Darkness. Darkness falls away as they rise up and enter hospitals where machines whirl blood back into liter bags, and her own blood, dark and heavy, grows like a song in the blood, singing, Tu, solo tu. Now she's at the stove in her kitchen, voice full-throated as they wake the sun who travels home through snowy miles and boreal flames, to sleep in their bed, warmed by their new old selves at midlife. At the same early hour, but now a decade before, they send the boy off to school and awaken to 10 years marriage, fierce black hair, whorled and tangly from bed. From a basement workshop bench, he says she'll always be his consentida. She wrings wet clothes opposite him, and her laughter eddies green and gold inside his unbriared ear. And now they're riding a trolley, the boulevard scrolling behind them, the stone bridge unwinding ahead. They hold hands looking out, faces close in the wind that flings away a bird. They track to fields arriving fast, and the wind blows again, this time stirring heart-shaped leaves into a dance of first sight. She wears bachetas, bandana, he's in knickers, slouch cap, both not yet teens, gazing at the other, dusk eyes giving dawn a new aura. Love once so fresh, once more takes root, and time, that still cloud of the air, rolls off in rosy fragments and dwindles until there is no time or darkness. White boys. After school, they stalk the streets in t-shirts, rolled blue jean cuffs, fedoras, with names like Tommy, Ghost, and Head. I'd see them coming and run or backtrack, sometimes hide between houses till they passed. When they jumped me, whooping for joy, I'd hate myself for getting caught again, but hate them more. The dead blue eyes, the flared nostrils, black holes of mouths. They never saw me, never me, yet ruthlessly, clearly named what they refused to see. Greaser, Spick, Beaner, Pepperbelly. You know the names. You've heard them all before. Those guys must have hated themselves more than they hated me, because I see now they needed to feel powerful, needed, without knowing it, to fill an emptiness that gaped open when somebody hurt them or showed them the power of hurting. I remember being shoved or punched or spat on because the name-calling wasn't enough, or rather, it ignited cold hate like a match to gasoline. I didn't think about the day I'd be bigger or have a gang of my own to meet justice. That's what all Avengers call it. Nor did I cry for help. The street was still, the windows blank, the children drowned in public pools. You might think this a dream, but dreams don't hurt or kill. They dump you on the street where you die in drama. I thought about death, a rock smashed into my head, or kicks to the ribs until my breath smelled of iron, then God-hate, then dust or ash. In 1968, the summer of love was dead, and hate fell like cold rain on a great city. I couldn't wear love beads, a Nehru, or sit cross-legged on the grass getting high. I was keeping my head low, trying to stay alive on old familiar streets that turned their backs on me. Once, somebody did recognize me. Hey, that's Nonos's cousin. Leave him alone. Rude brown boy with chiseled torso, my cousin stood up to the white boys, stood his ground against them, and gave me names for them. Gringo, Gabacho, Bolillo, Honky, Gray, Ofe, words that mixed together, creating a locked box in which was stored the most insane and violent voices let loose inside our throats. I was saved from the white boys that time, who surely would have stomped me there into the pavement. As I ran, I turned to see the overhead power lines slicing the sunburst sky into thick shadows, the street still muted, a baffled sound pouring through every part of me, and those punks at the corner moving off, laughing, talking about where to go, what to do tonight. Two more poems. Yesterday was the birthday of John Keats, who has been very important to many, many poets throughout the world. In Latin America, his influence can be found. The Argentinian novelist Julio Cortázar wrote a very interesting book called The Image of Keats. Borges, of course, was someone who read Keats. It was strange, though, because I got an email the other day from somebody in Chile who asked me if there was a translation of my book about Keats. It's been 20 years. My book is 20 years old now. Never been to college, but it's 20 years old. It's like, you're the first to ask me, you know. No, there's no translation of Keats, of my book about Keats. But yesterday was his birthday, and it's a very, very short, sad story. He died at the age of 25 from tuberculosis. Tuberculosis was like what AIDS is now in Europe in the 19th century. It was just endemic. And Keats's whole family was wiped out by tuberculosis. Only his baby sister survived. And when Keats had his second major hemorrhage, he was confined to bed. And by this time he was secretly engaged. And his fiancée, Fanny, would come to visit him like for an hour every day, and it was all he could stand. Her presence just filled him with so much anguish and desire, because he realized he would never be married to her. He was doomed. So she would come and sit for an hour and then leave. And he was still trying to write at this time, but mostly just letters, and he wrote lots of letters to her. It was an age in which people wrote letters pretty much like we talk on the phone. His letters are fascinating to me. You know, they tell his whole story, but in the letters, now and then there's these little facts which have never been sort of corroborated or sort of expanded on. And I got very fascinated with them, and I started writing a poetic sequence about Keats based on just these little odd things. And in one of the letters, when he's lying in bed sick, he sees his betrothed Fanny as the Huri, and the Huri is from Muslim tradition. And I think you'll sort of grasp what this is. So I try to write about, just imagine that, but to capture something of the time and the spirit. Keats, what's called Keats and the Houri. In a small room, unquiet yet still, he lies spectre-thin, weak and ill. His betrothed sits by the box bed, knitting a cap for his fevered head. He watches shadows as she sings her natural response to everything. They too hear and feel her grace, stretching wings that float in space. He recalls a dazzling spring morn when his love was fully born. But the time is lost to have her. The future becomes a gray cadaver, lowered into frozen dark earth. Destined for this from birth. Thinking works him up till he goes mad, works him up, then leaves him sad. Dear girl, he says, acting stronger, let me not detain you longer. Go to town and return tomorrow, but send good night for the sparrow. He writes on a scrap of page, I will not sing in a cage. I will be obstinate as a robin. Health is my expected heaven, and you are the Houri. How did he know of the Houri? Maids of heaven, so beautiful, their joy enthralls the faithful. The white and black of their eyes, it's said, feels itself like paradise. Earth stirs at their presence like the dawn's appearance. Neither child nor woman, neither her nor them, the Houri is both at once, spirit upraising those who hear it. Sweet is the light of her song that blows the shadows along like clouds dimming every star. Her beauty came from afar, but once near made him its prize with her soft immortal sighs. He had his own poetic belief, yet in a downward spiral of grief he fell, seeking love, into a place that now became the face which each day kept company with him and set him free for a golden hour. As death approached, the warm health he sought turned bitter chill, but for a moment he still could feel the first kiss and embrace that eclipsed the fitful nights of sleep. He was about to weep when, lying alone, the ring on his hand gleamed, and he saw, beyond memory, the transports of beauty lay hands on his sunken chest to grant him calm and rest. He gazed at them unknowing, his heart pained, but showing him a path with their hands. Years later, in Holy Lands, a boy winds through the streets, cold with fever. He cannot keep up with the face of martyrs, lining walls where merchants barter greens for bullets, spice for hate, their only business, this merciless fate. He winds and winds through tombs life has become, strapped to a bomb, and enters a square post-haste. He swears by his book to taste the sexual bliss of virgins dwelling in holy pavilions of sinlessness and splendor. But how much truth can there be in literalization? It is the blind force of negation, impossible demands of texts that in truth a man erects by rending the robe of psyche, by denying soul's reality. Her screams are drowned out by the flames that shout in the market or kingdom's gate. He cuts flowers with his hate that assumes a ghastly form, his will gripping like a sword. For an instant he smells flesh, not perfume, his own raw flesh, in the unhinged heaven burning, and death teaches him nothing. For Keats, death's only purpose is patience before the change to dust. He prays love to carry him along from outer darkness to dawn, awakened into a far valley of sunlit trees where the Huri reward love with love. So without gazing above, without need of any decree, he sees that sweet company his girl looks out from and is, melting in a voice that rises. Don't be angry with yourself. Don't be angry with yourself. It shimmers halo light over him, stare cool eyes refreshing him. Her song resounds so very deep. I'll be yours so you can sleep. I'll be yours so you can sleep.